because that's where you, I guess, really honed your skills. Talking about where you were doing the transactions for other agents.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you for remembering that. In my real estate career spanning over 3 decades, being the curious person that I am and always being very solution oriented, after about 10 years of being in the industry, I realized that we had a huge problem.
This is a show for people who love what they do and for the rare few who do it because they have to. So I think that might be Liz.
I think I'm one of those people that I'm fiercely chasing after things that I love to do and running away from things that I don't want to do. Yeah.
So in part 1, we talked about Liz and how she came to this work, got a little bit of her history. So today I want to focus on what it looks like in practice. So I usually don't do this, but I prepared some questions maybe to prompt you to get you kind of going down a direction.
Absolutely.
So especially for people in South Florida who are thinking about selling a home, buying their next home, or doing both at the same time. So let's start there, Liz. When someone says, I need a realtor, what do you hear underneath that? Because you have a whole different response to how your entire approach to this.
Yeah. And that is an excellent question because you're asking, they're telling me something, but you're asking me, what am I hearing?
Right.
And so,
exactly.
Yeah. And once you've done this so many times and you understand the underlying questions, then you're coming at it from a different perspective. And sometimes people don't know that. They don't know what to expect. They think we're going to go directly into technicalities. And I answer questions. I want to be very direct. But I also slow things down quite a bit because sometimes we don't even know. And I don't know if you ever read the book by Dean Graziosi, the one that has all these like 10 layers of why you are doing anything.
So what's the name do you know the name of that book?
I'll look it up and I will definitely share, but it's Dean Graziosi is the author and he takes you through asking basically 10 times. You go, why? For example, if somebody says, I want to buy and sell a home. And so the next question, of course, is, well, why? What is prompting you to do that right now?
I've heard this before. I didn't hear it referenced with him, though. Like you asked why like 10 times. It takes 10 times to break through to actually find what the underlying why actually is.
Dean Graziosi, let me see here, because now I'm going to be like 10.
I've got a couple of books here. Millionaire Success Habits, The Gateway to Wealth and Prosperity.
Yes, that's it. The Secret Habits of, Well, you know what? He has, I guess, the Millionaire Mindset. You know, there's several, but 7 levels deep, not 10, 7. And so it says a profound self-discovery tool in the why behind, why you do the things that you do. So anyway, that is something that I believe when you've been doing this a long time and you have a lot of insight, I think you do that naturally. And so when somebody says, hey, I'm looking to buy and sell a home, I'm going to automatically go into that mode of really understanding why. And I take it gently. Otherwise, it can sound very like an inquisition. But one thing leads to another. And so in the surface, most people think about a job change, for example, or let's talk about specifically some of the clients that I've been working with lately. Your family is growing, right? You're going from 2, 3 children to the 4th child. That seems to kind of like explode families, or you're downsizing. Your children have left the coop and now you need to do things in a different way, or we're an empty nester and now you're welcoming, whether it's boomerang children or parents, elderly parents and things like that. There's so many things happening.
Or like me, my entire family, like probably sooner than later, I would say in the next 10 years, I probably won't have any family in Florida. So that's if I had to look at my underlying why, because I've already mentioned I'm interested in possibly moving. This isn't like, oh, we're going to make this decision tomorrow. Next year we're moving. No, this is like I really enjoyed our first talk where we were talking about, it's about preparation, right? And it's not a matter of, well, the market is here and the market is, no, this decision I'm going to be making when we're ready to move, it's not going to matter what the market is.
Exactly.
We're going to make that move, and it's going to happen. Because, 2 daughters are out. I have a son. He'll probably be out. I have a mother. I hope she lives forever, but I have to be unfortunately realistic. That's not going to happen. And when she's gone, that she's going to be my last connection here to Florida.
And, and if you don't see yourself here in the future, then of course your mind is already going in that direction. And so I feel like it is my job to understand things that you have not even considered yet. Problems especially that you haven't thought about, and anticipating all of those things as an expert, as a counselor. So I like calling ourselves strategists, right? Because it's almost like whatever territory you're entering, you need to understand the lay of the land, no pun intended. And then you need to come up with a plan. And so I'm looking specifically for pain points. I'm looking to understand what is it that you're trying to avoid with all your might. And it's because most of us are motivated, not necessarily by, for example, there's something good happening on the other end, wherever you're going, but you're also trying to avoid some pain. And we're mostly more motivated by those avoiding pain than we are by like a new job.
So I'm curious, have you counseled or guided people that when you got them to kind of have a better understanding of that pain, right? Where they might have actually had an understanding that said, oh, you know what? That pain that I thought was unbearable actually isn't that bad. I don't think I'm going to move at all. Where I'm at is really good.
Oh, yes. Yes, okay. It's happened. And so, and you know what? And to me, I know that may be disappointing to some people, but
for a realtor, it might be disappointing.
But I think that's the strange thing about me. And it is that I truly am coming to this, and I think I may have mentioned this before, this mama bear heart that I have. Mm-hmm. And I tend to come to people first with that idea that we're going to be helping you. And you as a person, it's not about the sale. It's not about a transaction, because I always say that the one thing that we never do is we cannot change timing or motivation. We don't try and manufacture that, right? So I'm not going to come to you with fear tactics that if you don't put this oil on your face, you're going to get wrinkled and you're going to look really bad, right? Like we don't do that. What we do is that when someone raises their hand and they say, I have a need, I have a want, and can you help me? And then we try to then go alongside of them and walk them through a process of them being able to understand the why they're doing what they're doing. And you're absolutely right that some people have realized after running through the exercise of saying, you know what, I actually don't want to do that. In one very specific example are people who thought that they wanted to be landlords. And they wanted to get into the real estate investment platform and become landlords. And so I've had people that do that, and it's also, that's tied to the market, your age, the area that you're in, how you utilize those properties as well. Because if they have, let's say, some vacation value to you, then of course that's going to be different than someone who is completely detached from it. So, and it's okay. I'm going to say that I feel like it's a win. And I'll tell you why it's a win is because when you've worked with someone like that and you came to the end of that road and there was no transaction, that person becomes what we call a forever fan. Like, this person forever is going to know that I'm coming from a very genuine place of wanting to help them rather than sell them something. And so they're going to, they're the ones that are referring us clients. And so we
love
believe
that.
in that.
100%. I actually had a prospect this past summer and we got talking to him. I had made some recommendations, and his actually current person they were using, we're making the same recommendation. So it probably helped that they were hearing it from me as well. they're having some difficulties and some challenges though with that person. Apparently they work through them. But as you said, I think that person, they may never hire me in the future. That may not happen. But I have a pretty strong feeling that and I'm talking to you, Steve, if you're watching this, if he wants to recommend somebody, he's probably going to recommend, at least give me a shot at it. He's going to tell his buddies, hey, you might want to give Kirk a call. I never actually used him, but he came to me with some really sound advice that I actually ended up taking with my current solution provider, and it worked for me. And it was a great win, right? Because it makes me feel good because I gave him some advice and he followed it. Now, granted, his solution provider was saying the same thing, and I'm saying, he's right. That's what, if you want the results you're looking for, you're going to have to do that. And it was a matter of him spending a considerable lot more money. I'm like, it's just, that's the way it's going to work. Sorry. And it's in the marketing game. Yeah. And it ended up working for him and he had some good success. So I was like, wow, that was great. I'm glad to know the advice I'm giving is actually sound advice. Yeah. So I really feel very good about that as well.
And of course, the trust level goes way up. And I think that that's more important than anything else. And we do know that the transactions that are ours, those people are going to come, things are going to happen the way they were supposed to. One of the things that I've learned is that I could give you all the answers on day one, and that is not going to be as valuable to that person as if they are going through that process themselves. They need to process this.
I kind of like to say they're not really ready for that, right? Would that maybe one way to say it? They're just, well, and you'll understand this as a photographer. One of the instructors, I remember Peter Hurley as an example. And I think I saw some feedback where like, well, how come he didn't tell me about that? And I said, well, he didn't tell me either, but he told so-and-so. And I was like, well, we probably weren't ready to actually process that. That wasn't, we were still struggling with these other things below that level of understanding. Mm-hmm. And, already just going through his coursework and his training, you're already like 90% better than everybody else out there. So, we're working on that last 10%. And he's like, get these other fundamentals down. Then we can start working on that last 10%. And I think that's what you're kind of talking about. It's like, you want to get kind of this fundamental understanding of working towards the why. So if you jump ahead and you can you've done this a while, you can probably figure it out a lot of times before.
Yeah.
The people you're working with even tell you, right? And you probably have a pretty good idea, but you don't just blurt it out with them and hit them hard with it. You kind of process through it to where they're finally maybe ready to actually understand that. Am I getting it?
Yeah, that just happened in December with a client that he didn't know the market. He's coming from outside of the country, doesn't know the market really, but he's visited enough times to know that Fort Lauderdale is the place where he wants to move to. He doesn't want to be freezing his buns off for the rest of his when he retires. And so he knows he wants to be here, but he's not really sure about neighborhoods, about property values, but they have a clear idea of what should a home look like, a smart home, a newer home. He's tall, so he wants, very high ceilings. He wants walkability. He's used to living in metro areas where in Florida, as you know, is such a commuter environment. Like we get in our cars everywhere.
But there are a few communities that are not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, he's looking for that walkable and so once he described, and he gave me a budget. And so rather than me telling him, almost like smirk and laugh and say, buddy, you're never going to find that house that you've described at that price, rather than knock him across the head, making him feel, like he doesn't know what he's talking about, I provided him the homes that were in the budget that he required. And then I also showed him the home that he described. And I said, I want to take you to the neighborhood and I want to show you that house that you've described. I want to show it to you. The price difference was remarkably, it is very big. It does give him a reality of, and then he kind of walked through it. And now he said, you know what? We can do that, right? So he just thought that homes, the last time he checked, they were at a different price point, and it was many years ago. So it was really a reality check, but, very professionally, very, kind. and just allowing them to walk through that. So instead of me telling him, you're in left field here, I'm just going to show you everything that you're asking for. I'm also going to show you some other things, and then let them come to that conclusion. And now he's saying, this is the neighborhood where I want to be. And now he knows how to adjust the finances to be able to meet those goals that he has in mind. I know that I'm like I said, I have this kind of mama bear thing that I've had my whole life, but there's also a lot of training that goes with that. And a lot of people don't know, some of the most well-educated, well-rounded people that I know are realtors, that they just are in a continual learning mode. They're always, working on reading a lot of books, self-improvement, and understanding themselves, understanding people better. And one of those came a few years ago, and it was another training that it has to do, the call letters are NEPQ, and it's like something about, a neuro understanding of like what people are thinking. And again, rather than giving them answers and rather than hitting them across the head with, here's my widget, buy it, it's asking them questions so that they themselves are getting clarity on what is the problem, what have they've already tried and it hasn't worked, what would be the consequences of giving up and not succeeding in those goals that they have. And then what is the plan ahead? What does that look like? What do you want it to look like? And then pairing with the right professional. And that goes with really anything in life, I think. I think that's a very good way of analyzing just about anything and realizing that in life, it's probably not going to be the how, Kirk, that's that important. Because the how, there's things that, for example, your fixer is doing that you don't even need to know how to do it. It's really the who. And I believe that in life, and as AI grows and life becomes so different than what we've known in up until this century, I do believe that we're about to see some really radical changes in our society, culturally, geographically. I just think that the world's going to become infinitely smaller with AI, and the capacity of knowledge is going to be, almost beyond what a human should be processing at any one point in time. I think that this kind of human touch is going to become so much more valuable. So we're looking at those things in that way. You need that voice to voice, that face to face conversation where everything that I'm doing, my facial expression, my body expression, we're saying so much, and we want to know that that's a real person, right? That it's not a fake AI. Like this, somebody just sent me a complete video with O'Leary. I could tell, my eyes already trained on seeing the patterns. So it's O'Leary saying, absolutely, like don't buy, it's fear. And then in YouTube, you are required to tell people that that this has been altered, right? And it even says, oh, we're doing our best to be accurate. But at the end of the day, the guy is selling fear. And guess what he's selling? He's selling a subscription to his channel. So some people are going to respond to that fear, and then they're going to want to know, oh my gosh, like what's next? Because he's using an authority figure to put his message out there. And I find that very dishonest. And again, you're making a broad statement and you're telling people don't buy. Because I'm thinking, well, you're not everybody is ever going to follow the same pattern and need. Somebody who is ready to go into an assisted living facility, for example, or they are having to take care of an elderly parent, or you are getting married and you're moving to another place. And so there's just so many different nuances to why people buy and sell, that for someone to make a blanket statement and say, don't do this or don't do that in a very fear-mongering way, I find that it doesn't serve anyone and it's very dishonest. So I think that it's critical that when someone is looking for help, and it doesn't matter what it is, that you ask, who is the person who has experience, who has proof of concept? You'll be able to prove the results, and not just because there's so many claims out there that they even show you videos, for example, of these little machines that say that they're going to cool a bedroom in, seconds.
Oh,
and
right.
Then you get the piece and the thing doesn't work. And so they make it look like, these videos look like creams that erase wrinkles.
There's this AI pet that they're advertising, and literally in the video they're showing real dogs.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm like, how are they getting by from the FTC about that? Because they're literally showing a live puppy.
Yeah.
That's clearly not this AI robot. Then they show another, and then it's the size thing. They're showing these puppies that are, I'm not sure the weight wise, but they're probably like about like this.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And they're showing the AI thing, and it's fitting in your hand.
Yes.
It's like, well, that dog that's this size is clearly not this little tiny thing.
It's just lies. And so we need to ask, who is the person that I can, that I can touch, that I can speak to, and that already knows, and I think that those are the best hacks in life, is like you connect with people that have already gone through, and on their own time and dollar, they have sorted out the problems, they have worked out the kinks, so that you don't have to pay for all of that knowledge by making your own mistakes and trying to figure things out that someone else has already sorted out. So back to your question, when somebody says, I would like to buy or sell a home, immediately what I'm hearing is, I have some problems, and I have problems that I don't even know how big these problems are, and I need help solving them. That's what I hear.
Interesting enough, yesterday he had mentioned Stephen Bartlett. And I'm curious, was that reference more for the podcast or for the book?
Oh, in last night.
No, last night. Last night you mentioned.
Yeah. The reason why I mentioned him, The Diary of CEO, is because he's such a curious individual. I love that. I relate to that. I am also, so curious. And so what he does is, rather than having a recipe, or he's not a one lane kind of a person, because you see his guests have a myriad of backgrounds, and there's no rhyme or reason, other than he himself has a curiosity, and he investigates, and he wants, he comes with a very humble, he really wants to know. And I love that, because people who believe that they can always learn from others, they're constantly learning. And I think that's so important. So I referenced him because I was saying, I love how he brings all of these people, including in the medical arena. And so he's brought in, last night, we were talking about some health topics. And I said, I know that in his podcast, he has had people who are brilliant in their field, very passionate in their field, and he goes in investigates and questions them about all of these different health things that they're very interesting, and he does it in a very clever way. But it's coming naturally because he's so curious, and he asks all these questions because he wants to know.
One of the things that I guess I was hoping to kind of know, curious your response to it, is a lot of times somebody wants to sell their house. They typically have this idea that their house is always, what you hear from a lot of real estate agents is, the owners, they always think their house is worth more than it's worth. And I understand that. But what I also understand is that there's always a glass ceiling to be broken. There's a neighborhood that is, for whatever reason, substantially been depressed in pricing, and no one's ever had the cooperation, I'll say, not to give you guys a bad name, that helps sell homes, but not having the cooperation to actually take a look at that and go, you know what? I think this entire street is probably worth another $100,000. We just recently had that happen with a neighbor, a couple of houses down. When she went to go sell her house, I want to say she first priced it, I think, $200,000 higher than anything has ever sold on our street. It still ended up selling, I think, for $100,000 more than the highest priced home at that given time. Mm-hmm. And it went to a next hundreds level. So I think everything was pretty much selling for around 500s. She priced it at 700s, low 700s, and ended up selling, I think, for the mid to upper 600s. So is what it ended up selling for.
Yeah.
And
that is very possible. And so what you're describing is, I think it has to do with many, many criteria. And one of the most important criteria, it has to do with demand. Because at the end of the day, price is really, I have a saying, and I have it written in our agreements, and it says that with our listing agreements, and it says that the seller and the realtor, we do not set the price. The person who is willing to come and put their cash down, they're the ones that are going to determine the value of anything. And so when there is an abundance of product, and there is ease of getting loans, interest rates and things like that, then that changes everything. And so we have to take everything into consideration. Now, is it possible that a homeowner over improved their property and they may not see that money come back? Yes. Is it possible that they made it, they really remodeled a home in a very strategic way and they will be able to command an additional $100,000? Yes, absolutely. And we have rules of thumb.
The house actually ended up getting, it sold. It got completely remodeled again.
Wow.
And it went up another $100. I went up another 100,000 from that.
Yeah.
So the house actually went up like 200,000, and everything around us has kind of followed that pattern. I just say that because it's just, I hear a lot of times with real estate agent, owners always want so much for their property, and I get you can over invest in your home, over improve. Yet at the same time, I just find it interesting that that's happened now in this particular street twice, where a house went up for sale. The neighbors are going, that person's crazy. There's no way they're going to get that price, because they're like breaking that ceiling. They're setting the high price. So that's kind of where, that's what I'm trying to drive at, is like, how do you know that a house is capable of setting that new high price that's for that particular area? Because somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. And, so there's most of the time, a lender, for example, they have a formula. And so if anybody is buying through a lender, they will have to abide by those standards. So for example, if the appraisal is going to come back and it's going to show that home is absolutely not worth X amount of money. And so even if the demand is extremely high and inventory is very low and somebody's willing to pay that, the lender is locked into their risk assessment method, right? So they're not going to go beyond their methodology. They're not going to break that. And
sure, I've had people I know, they've had to pay an extra, $50,000 down to bring the loan to value to the point where the lender is going to be comfortable with the financing side of it.
The lender will say to me, you can pay hundreds of thousands of dollars above. That's fine. You can bring that cash to closing. You can buy that house. But on that home, meaning if I'm the lender,
we're going to finance this much.
Exactly. So that's something to keep in mind. And so when a buyer, and here's a situation that I had in recent years. There was a family that they wanted to move from the Las Olas area to the Davie area because their family lives in Davie. Now that they have children, they also want to be in that school district. And so they were willing to pay above the appraised value, considerably above it, because this is where they wanted to be. That was the school that they wanted to be. And so that was a non-negotiable for them, right? And so things like that are going to affect who buys the home. We've also had incidents where people from other areas, usually California, the Northeast, New York City, for example, and to them, when they see a home at $700,000 and what you get for it, to them, it's a drop in the bucket because they're used to.
That same house could be $800,000. They'd still buy it because it's still far below what they're used to.
Yeah. So what they perceive that they're obtaining has greater value to them, and they have the finances and the ability to do that. Now, I think that the true test is not when that first sale occurs, like you were describing. I think it's going to be what happens when that person who bought that home at $100,000 above the rest of the community, what happens when they go to sell, right? And so that's where the true test.
And that's what I'm saying. And that house went for $100,000 more.
Yeah, yeah.
So it went up $200,000.
So, but the second round, but not the same home.
Now we're same home.
Okay, so you're saying that the last time that let's just call it house Y.
It was $650, I think, if I remember right, and everything else was selling for in the $500s.
House originally sold for $100,000, and then again it sold again.
No, $100,000 more than the market.
Okay, and then that same house Y did that again at
for $787
at that same rate.
$787 even
in today's market.
Right now, I think they're asking $850.
Now, why do you think that is with that particular home? What do you think it was about that home that made it so desirable that, it sounds like has that been in the last 5 years that it has sold twice?
And square footage doesn't actually necessarily mean anything either. It's actually quite interesting. There's another home just like mine. So that home is considerably larger than mine, I think by maybe 400 or 500 square feet, which is quite a bit of square footage.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a home like mine that went for $750 and it didn't even have a new roof on it. So the person that bought it, I actually looked it up because I was curious how much did they spend on the roof. They had to spend another, I think, $30,000 on the roof. They still had to go in there and do some AC work. It had so somebody had bought it. It has leak in the roof. So it was a, what do you call it? An estate situation. It had a leaky roof. The person was in a nursing home. The kids are still living there. But then that person dies and then they sell it. And it's a mess, right? Mold, it had a leaky roof. They had never repaired it. So they repaired the roof. They painted it, but they didn't replace it. And I guess the person, which tells me chances are the person that bought that, it was a cash buy because the roofs in my entire neighborhood are all aging out to the point where you can't get insurance on it.
And they're barrel tile roofs?
Barrel tile roofs, correct.
Yeah.
And so the new owner ended up putting a new roof on it, and then they had to do some electrical. They had to do, I don't know what the HVAC did. I think they probably had to reduct it because it hadn't been reducted and they had all that nastiness in there. But they got the person that bought it when it was a mess, they went through and just made it look, a show house. It was just amazing what they did to it.
Yeah.
And so it showed super well. And I'm guessing maybe it was a cash purchase.
So do you think they're happy? Do you think they're happy with their purchase?
I think for people that are at that level, it depends on their mentality, really, truly. I mean, I think some people have this idea that money is not limited. And I think the people that have money is not limited, I don't think they really care. Okay, well, that really sucks bad. I kind of got taken advantage of. Well, I need to go out and make another couple $100,000 to fix this situation. I
would be curious to talk to them and say, do you think you got a great deal in the home? Like once they see the value. So here's the opposite side, right? Playing devil's advocate. Let's say that you were the buyer and you didn't know what was going on and what the situation is. And now you live in a neighborhood where you bought by $100,000, you bought the most expensive home. No one has ever paid that much money in that neighborhood. And then you have to put a lot of money into it because you have to buy a new roof and all this. And so you're putting out all this money. And now you realize that, if they paid that much over and the lenders, because the reality is most buyers are not going to buy cash. And we're talking about an outlier situation. That usually isn't the norm because over 80% of buyers are going to need a loan. And they're probably.
Yeah, and I'd even go as far as to say it's the buyers that don't need a loan.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to make a business decision. They're going to look at the cost of money, look at what their other opportunities are. They may still write a cash contract. Because they can, and they'll have proof of funds, but they still may end up getting a loan at the end. I've had that happen. I sold a property. It was a cash contract when I went to go close. I mean, he was nice. He told me, he goes, dude, I'm going to write a cash contract. If I have problems, we'll still close, but I'm just letting you know there's probably going to be a loan involved, but we're going to still close in 2 weeks, just like I said we will, because I can write you a check if I need to, or bring a cashier's check.
That happens, and we've worked with that as well. And I've done that for our buyers, that we write cash contracts, especially when the market is extremely competitive. We want to give the seller the assurance that this is going to be a very fast and smooth transaction, so that we have an edge over other people that are coming with loans. And we go in, line by line, because most contracts are about 12 pages long, and there's so many areas there. And every single one of them, there is an opportunity to build goodwill with the opposite party, so that your contract as a buyer is going to be a lot stronger. And but the market that we're in right now is interestingly the opposite. And by the way, this video that someone sent me really worried with O'Leary. You know who the guy is, the bald guy from
he's on Shark Tank.
Yeah, exactly. And so
actually, he's on several shows. He's not just Shark Tank.
Yeah,
but I think it's probably what he's most well known for.
Exactly. Yeah. And so because he's very well respected, and here he is saying, do not buy in West Palm Beach and Palm Beach County, So, I mean, that's a very broad statement. And so imagine that this guy, the buyer of that home, that he paid over $100,000, and he hears something like that, so the reality is that the market, everybody's situation is going to be different, but it can happen. To be very clear with your question, is absolutely it can happen. And I think that it has to do with time. For example, if I see a seller that has the ability of testing the market, many people do not have that luxury. They don't have the luxury of testing something, testing a theory to see if it's going to go well or not.
Well, the current owner, just to let you know, the current owner of that house is probably going to test it, because he's already bought his next house. He's still in that house. So I think he's, I mean, obviously he doesn't want to be paying for two houses for too long, and whether that's actually paying interest or if it means opportunity costs with the cash that he's got invested in the house.
If he did a beautiful job, I think that when buyers come in, and because when you renovate a property, you cannot just look at the physical expenses that somebody paid. You also have to look at the time invested, the knowledge. And so if a home was remodeled and it was done very, very well, high quality materials, finishes, very well finished, very professionally done, that is not, believe it or not, unfortunately, that is not the norm. The norm is, schleppy work and, and inconsistency in the workmanship. Okay. That's what's most common, unfortunately. But when somebody comes and they've seen enough homes and they look at the level of materials and workmanship that the home, and then they're thinking, how much would it cost me to do this myself? And could I even do that dollar for dollar? Because prices of wood, plywood, and materials are going up, even though nothing else may be going up, meaning income, salaries, dividends, whatever, that those may not be going up, but, plywood is still going up.
And then they got to live in it. And then they got to live in it too.
Yeah. There's so many things to look at and to consider, that if a seller comes to me, like I know realtors that say, I will never take an overpriced listing. And I'm thinking, I look at it in a different way, right? Like we want to price the home, and it has really nothing, but it has more to do with the seller's goal. The price is tied to the seller's goal. Okay. Our goal, of course, will always be to maximize and to net the seller the most. But if somebody comes to us and they say, my pain point is time, I have no time. That's the luxury part for them, right? Like that's the golden nugget. That's a pain point that we have to meet. And so for them, getting an extra, whatever, $50,000 is going to actually cost them way more than that if that transaction does not get finished in a specific period of time. So then the price is related to, in great part, to what is the seller's goals. And if somebody comes to me and they are balancing speed with high net, then, we have a strategy for that. If someone is completely on the, I have to get out of here yesterday, then we have to come up with a strategy that is going to be successful. And we cannot be running experiments, right? And so that's where our experience really, really shines, because we give written guarantees to our clients and we say to them that the strategy that we're going to put in place is a strategy that is proven to work in any market.
For their specific goals.
For their specific goal, exactly.
Right.
And, and there are times.
This goes back to your original statement that we were talking about, is trying to get down to that why. What's going on? Yeah. What's your goals? Why are you making these choices?
And, if I could add, because this is happening a lot right now, and it has to do with buyers. And as of 2024, the new national rule that every single buyer that is out there and licensed agent opens a door for them. The rule says that agent had to provide them with a written buyer broker agreement that spells out the relationship between them and compensation. That is a new national rule. And so for agents, every time that they go on their phones and they want to request access to a property, it prompts them and it says, by requesting access, you are basically agreeing and confirming that you already have these documents signed. That is the national rule.
Interesting.
And so, and unfortunately, most agents and most buyers do not know this. They're not doing it. The agents, unfortunately, they should. The original rule came about after a settlement. This was a lawsuit, and the DOJ was involved, and there was a settlement, and part of that settlement, so you can say that the DOJ, the National Association of Realtors, the local boards, and all of the brokers that are part of that system are basically involved. But this basically came from a judge and said, this is what this settlement has to, and it must include, right?
Interesting.
And,
yeah.
And very,
I have another
very,
question regarding that. So is it possible in the state of Florida to have a dual role? Can you be both a buyer and seller agent at the same time? So you have a listing for a home. I'd like to buy it. I call you and you ask me, do you have an agent representing you? And I'm like, no, how about I just can I have you as my agent? Is that something that's possible in the state of Florida?
Absolutely. With a huge caveat. And I'm going to give you an example that I like to use. We all have seen all these law shows with lawyers and judges, right? We've been in the chambers where the judge is talking to both the plaintiff's lawyer and the defendant's lawyer. And so if you think about how a judge became a judge, it's usually somebody that's well respected and trusted because of their level of experience and knowledge. And they're able to counsel both parties, even though they are supposed to apply the law blindly, right? So if you think about it, they've gotten there through, again, experience and knowledge and trustworthiness. That's when they've gotten to that particular level. And they are going to be able to counsel the plaintiff's attorney as well as the defendant's attorney at the same time without favoring one over the other. Okay, so the situation that you've just described is in the state of Florida, we call it going from a single agency when you have a fiduciary, meaning that your loyalty is to one party, let's say the seller, and then all of my listings, for example, I signed a document that says that the owner gives me permission to transition to a transactional agent if I am able to bring a buyer. Now, that, I believe, works, and buyers and sellers should be very aware of when they should or shouldn't allow that agent to become it's not a dual agent, because you're working for two people as a Switzerland in the middle, neutral transaction. You're doing
almost
everything
like a mediator.
Yes, exactly. And
I can see
so,
some advantages to that. If you're in a negotiation perspective,
yes, yes.
instead of me
If,
having to contact my agent and my agent's contacting you,
yeah,
and then you're
yeah,
contacting this other owner, and you got four
yeah,
people involved, and possibly even have a lender involved or two lenders involved.
yes.
Now you've got everything reduced down to the lowest that it can possibly do, and you're probably speeding up the communication.
Since you do not have, and I'll talk a little bit about the representation for the buyer, which is very important. So here's what the key is. Remember I said earlier that it's not the how, it's the who. And so this is why I said I use the judge's example, is because not every agent has that level of experience and knowledge that they will be able to handle this transaction. So if you already had a relationship with the owner, are you able to kind of put almost like a judge's hat on and be fair and balanced with the buyer, right? And especially if you already have a very close relationship with the seller. So can that person do that? And so when you read the documents, they're very clear. You start with owing loyalty and obedience to one party. And you're even, because this is an arm's length transaction with opposite interests, the seller wants the most and the buyer wants to pay the least. So they're at opposite. They're at odds with each other's wants and needs. And so the person handling both sides, they have to be a person who has experience and knowledge and is trustworthy, that is going to be able to do that in a very impartial and fair way. And so I caution people and I tell them that although you can do that, you still have to be engaged. If you're going to hire a doctor, you're going to check them out. You're going to vet them. You're going to want to hear good reviews from them. You're going to want other people to give you a good reference. And it's just as critical as when you're hiring an agent, because most buyers, they create a fiduciary relationship with an agent simply because they were available at a particular time to open a door. And buyers, they don't understand that at first, because they don't know any better, their angst is just, can you open the door? Can you open the door? I recently had somebody tell me, somebody that I've worked with before, and we're friends and we've done a lot for them. And of course we would take care of them. But they said, if you don't want to go open the door for me, I'm just going to call another realtor. And I thought to myself, that they're working against themselves. And the reason is because we were trying to pump on the brakes because they still did not have a loan approval letter. We don't want to set them up. And especially when they're super busy and even maybe a little bit anxious about their situation, we don't want to set them up for failure. We really do know what we're doing. And so we said, let's just wait. Let's wait a little bit. We're talking 48 hours for the lender to come back and give us the real numbers about their situation, so that we don't go looking at properties that they're just going to be a waste of time for you. And especially when they're in that anxious, I have no time, I'm in a hurry. I love the green beret. I may have used this. I love using this, that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Have you heard that?
No.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So if you want to go fast, you need to slow down. You cannot make mistakes. And so we work that way. If you're in a hurry, then I need to be laser focused, and I'm going to be checking everything three times.
Have all your checklists.
Yeah. It's almost
ready.
like, measure twice, cut once.
Right.
And so they were in such a hurry to just go and see that property. And guess what? It ended up that property, the agent had put in the wrong lot size. And so we dig deep into the flood zone, and all of these other things that are negatively affecting that property. Do you want to live near a power plant or a cell phone tower? Like other things that you may not know about that city and what the city intends to do with that, public property in the back of your home. So we want to slow things down so that we're very, very accurate, especially when you're in a hurry. And so what buyers a lot of times fail to recognize is that by just grabbing the phone and whoever can go open that door. Remember now, if somebody opens that door now, you've created a situation where that person is supposedly the one that's going to write up the contract for you. And the fact that they were available to open the door does not mean that they have the knowledge and the experience to negotiate on your behalf, to do it well, to understand your situation. And so you're literally jumping in bed and you have no clue who these people are and they know nothing about you either. And it happens a lot. And as a matter of fact, this new nationwide rule, in my opinion, is favoring buyers because it's forcing them to slow down and realizing that you're actually hiring a very important person in your life. You're going to have a relationship with them. You have to work closely with them. And so slow down, think about this a little bit more. And it's caught the attention of buyers because now buyers are being told, hey, Mr. Buyer, you have to pay for them. So the reason why they weren't aware of it before, or they didn't care, was because they automatically thought incorrectly that the seller pays for their broker's fees, which has never been true. For 100 years, that has never been true. It has been a clerical way of putting it. But the reality is that, the buyer always brings the money to the table. And from that money that the buyer brings to the table, then we put them in the right ledger in the closing statement so that the debt to income ratio of the buyer looks more favorable. It's been an eye opener for a lot of agents, even that they didn't realize these things. They were not well versed when it came to agency, and
definitely impacts the price, right?
Absolutely, and
if the buyer's paying a price, then
yes, the buyers, and they've always brought the money, but here's where psychologically it's put things upside down.
It's coming off of the seller's side of the ledger, but at the end of the day, it's still impacting
the buyer's money.
Buyer's
exactly. Yes. Exactly. And so when you don't understand these concepts and you're jumping based on emotion, chances are you're missing something. You're missing important clues to make good decisions. And that happens to all of us in any field. And that's why you really do want to think about who is the expert, who has the proven concept, who has the experience, who is going to be able to guide me and give me sound counsel that is going to save me time and money and help me avoid the headaches of inexperience. And that's probably the best advice that I could give a buyer and a seller as well, is to think about these things very carefully. And just like if they were hiring a doctor to do a very important surgery and they would take their time to check them out, in the same way, you're handing them probably the most expensive purchase and sale that you'll do in your lifetime. It merits that kind of vetting.
So I just want to take a moment real quick for a little notation here. So to my listeners, if you find this conversation is valuable, please like, comment, and share. It helps us reach the right people. And yes, I do read the comments. So just wanted to put I always forget to do it. So now I'm giving myself a reminder. And then I did have this. You've written this book that goes a little bit deeper and kind of gives a lot of really insights into some of your so-called secrets, maybe how you do things, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was my understanding if someone would email you is it the email address on the back of the book? Help at
dawesteam.com. Yes.
So email there, and you obviously need a address to mail the book to. Liz will drop you a copy of her book.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Is this book also available on Amazon, or
it isn't? It isn't.
It's not. It's only available by emailing you.
Yeah. And it's funny that you said secrets, because I often say that I call it maybe a secret sauce, but we are very generous with the information that we have. We share it widely. We share it with realtors. We share it with people that others would consider competitors, because I do believe that it's going to bring the entire industry into a different level. And so specifically, this book addresses homes that failed to sell in the past, right? So that's what this book is specifically addressing. It's for sellers that they had a home, it failed to sell for a myriad of reasons. And then we want to give them some hope. We want to give them hope that does happen, especially in a market like today, where we are seeing, I'm going to be doing my Monday market mashup, and I just was writing the details, the numbers for this particular week. And what we're seeing is we're seeing inventory very high, closing transactions very low, a lot of deals that are not making it through the finish line. They are attempting and they're failing to close. And so right now we're seeing a lot of that happening. And the reasons are so many. And every situation is different, whether it's the neighborhood, whether it's the timing, whether it was the pricing. And part of it is, yes, human error. And that's the number one problem, is that when I look at a listing, and I'm going to say it's easier to do an autopsy and to tell you what was done wrong than to hit the center of the bullseye from the beginning, right? So everybody can be a critic and say what was wrong, whether it was a movie or a meal or whatever. We're all critics nowadays, and we all have an opinion. But to reverse engineer something and say, this is what we're going to do, this is the time period that we're going to do it in, that takes more finesse, more skill, more knowledge, more experience to be able to say, this is what we can do. So I do an autopsy, and I go from the beginning. We shared, I don't know if you got the email, but we shared some numbers that the National Association of Realtors just put out regarding the number of realtors nationwide that have a license but are engaging in literally zero transactions in the last year in 2025. And so that number is shocking. It's over 70%.
70%. Let's repeat that. 70%. These are licensed realtors.
Yes.
And so they're active license, technically practicing, but they haven't sold anything.
Zero transactions in 2025. Yeah. And so the graphic that we created, it's a visual, so you can see, and I did red, yellow, and green. And so the yellow, obviously, if it's over 70, that means that we have less than 30% to divide between the other one. But the little bit in the top, the green part, is the agents that are doing over 10 transactions a year, which I would consider to be the bare minimums for someone that calls themselves a full-time professional agent.
To make a living.
Yeah. And it doesn't have much to do with making a living. Obviously, that's a very, very important. But here's the thing. If you were to put that in perspective of the number of times that you're doing something, anything at all.
Right. I was just kind of going to go and contradict what I just said. Because you could do 2 transactions in a year, and if they were expensive enough homes, you could still make a living.
Yeah.
But then you're only doing this thing twice versus maybe 24 times. If you did 2 homes a month on average, 24 homes a year, who's going to have the better knowledge of what you're doing? I think it's
what's happening in the market at that moment, right? What are the problems that you're running into? And I also never like lumping in the condo market with the single family market in residential, because they are so vastly different.
Really?
So we do not lump those together. They're very, very different. They require different skill sets. And so when you look at those numbers, then that's another reason why buyers and sellers really, really need to do a good job of. And then how we have a summary of what to ask an agent before you hire them, so that you don't end up, this is going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. It's not in there, but we do have a free PDF that we will send you that it says, the questions that you should ask an agent. So just reach out to us and just say, hey, can you send me the Q&A on how to vet an agent? And we even send it to realtors. Right. And so we're very transparent. And there's an exercise that I love doing with our sellers when we're doing a Zoom. I go into the MLS, into the back end, and I search and I ask them, give me a letter of the alphabet. And let's say they say C. I go into the C's, I pick any name, and I just go down the names of all these agents, and I show them the transactions that they have been involved in and the listings that they have. And we go down this list, and if 70% of agents are doing nothing, guess what I get? Blank pages. Then I take them to my page. I want them to see what a full-time professional team looks like when it comes to activity. We're in the office every day. We work 6 days a week, and we have systems. We have a team. We have support. And so we're not doing anything haphazardly. We're not practicing.
And I'm pretty sure, did we cover that in the first half
I
of this?
I don't remember.
So why don't we just take a moment and talk about that? Because that's kind of how you got started.
Yeah.
Right. So can you take a moment and share that little history part? Because that's where you, I guess, really honed your skills. Talking about where you were doing the transactions for other agents.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you for remembering that. Good memory. This is an interviewer that is listening and actually taking in that information. I love it. Thank you, Kirk. Yes. And so in my real estate career spanning over 3 decades, being the curious person that I am and always being very solution oriented, after about 10 years of being in the industry, I realized that we had a huge problem, and it was that top producers would be having this roller coaster cycle that had nothing to do with the market, but it had everything to do with the fact that when they had a lot of transactions put together, then they had to basically kind of retreat to an office clerical to babysit all of these deals that do need very careful attention and care. And so they wouldn't be out there bringing new deals in and, showing homes and doing all of that. So they would have this down cycle, and then they would do the up cycle. And then when I saw that, and of course we'd already trained assistants, and most of the time you're training somebody, you teach them everything that you know, and as soon as they're ready and they're really, really valuable to your team, they want to leave and they want to become an agent and they want to do it on their own. And so you're constantly having this revolving door of training assistants that are going to leave you. So in my mind, I said, wouldn't it be amazing if we had a licensed assistant that was not going to go anywhere, would not compete against you, and would be able to take these transactions from A to Z. And you would just continue to produce and engage with the client, help them bring the transaction, sign contracts, and then this expert person or team would take it on from that point forward. Now, at that time, transaction coordination did not exist. And so I'm aging myself. It was a long time ago. It was in the early 90s. And so I had the idea at that time, new technology was happening, namely the internet, emails. And so we had a lot of persons in California writing programs. So I contacted one of them. I explained to them what I wanted to do. And I wanted to automate looking at contracts, putting all the deadlines so that we could follow through and do this kind of in bulk and still be able to be extremely detailed. And so they created this program that would be able to do that. And so I sent a report. I had to convince people to get emails so they could get this report emailed to them. And so it was an exciting time, really, because things were changing and most people were warming up to the idea. There were some people that they said, no, I'm old school. I don't want to have anything to do with computers or emails. But for the most part, as you know, we all know now that everybody now has an email. So we began doing that very successfully. And I wanted to work with only the top producers. At that time, it was with RE/MAX agents only. That also allowed us to remain licensed under the RE/MAX brokerage and not break fiduciary because we were looking at contracts, right? Very sensitive information. We didn't want to have any issue, any conflict. So we decided to do that. And it hit the ground running because it wasn't that I invented a widget and I wanted to push it on somebody. I was fixing a problem that I was having myself and that all the top producers were having already. And so it immediately was successful. And during our first year, we had 300 sides that we closed. And so the rest is history.
That's amazing.
So,
Wow.
and so through that, it taught me to look at contracts with a fine-tooth comb and really understand the laws behind all of these clauses. And
you're licensed in Florida only, or?
I'm licensed in Florida only, and we did that on purpose. And it's because, again, I know that multitasking is. I've learned the hard way that I love the saying that multitasking is the opportunity to screw up more than two things at once. So, I
think
have learned,
haven't they actually proven that it's actually not possible in the
yeah,
human brain?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's because the brain is, and I do this with our team. And here's this little test that I have with my team is on a piece of paper, I will tell them to just put a dot and then focus on that dot, right? And then I ask them to put a second dot. And I tell them to focus on both of them at the same time. And the truth is you can't. You can only look at this one dot at a time. Our eyes are incredible. And from being a photographer, the like the f-stops of our eyes are we have no
very high dynamic range, I guess is how you technically describe it.
Exactly. But our eyes can only focus on one of these dots at a time.
Wow, that's incredible.
So I did it specifically because I thought I want to be an expert in Florida. I call myself a Florida historian. I travel throughout Florida. I go looking for places that most people don't know about, to do the staycations that you can travel to. And we love Florida. Florida's our home. So this is what we focus on. And specifically the Tri-County area, which has become so huge that we're even becoming more and more micro when it comes to markets. But because I lived in Palm Beach County and I have family, that for 3 decades, I know Miami-Dade County really, really well. I'm comfortable with that Tri-County area. And in the last few years that we've been vacationing a lot in the Space Coast and, Port St. Lucie area, Hutchinson Island specifically, we've been vacationing a lot there and, buying and selling property in that area. That's an area too because I realized that our systems can be translated in, if we know how to do the research, and we're going to be very detailed doing that, we can use these systems anywhere in Florida and apply these systems that have been proven anywhere in Florida. So thank you for asking about the transaction coordination, because it was like getting a PhD in contracts and transactions. It honed my skills. I was so thankful that I did that. And it was a business that, we employed several other realtors, licensed people, and it was very, very successful while we had that. But there's one thing I don't think that I covered, and it's something that I believe it's critically important. And when we are feeling that our emotions are heightened, that's a flag. And I think it should be for anything in life. I think that when emotions are running us, are fueling us.
We're not thinking very intelligently, are we?
Yeah. And I think and I love recently, because I've been digging deep into these things in the last 5 years as a mom with teens going into adulthood, and how critical it is that, a lot of people say, well, this is how I feel. And we've almost made feelings king over everything, over reason, over logic, over practicality, over truth even. Because have you heard people say, well, that's your truth?
Right. Sure.
Yeah. And
let me share something with you that really, to me, really concretes that. So we've sold several properties over our life, and the ones that I've made the most money on, I found ended up being our investment properties. And the ones that we made the least money on were the ones that we were living in.
Emotionally attached.
we were emotionally attached to those homes because we lived them. No matter, even if it was such a like, I got to get out of here, I got to move, it still doesn't matter. There's emotions driving the decisions. And so I remember, and even buying the home you're going to live in. I remember, I had a business and I was quite successful. I had, an accounting firm that I used for my business and for my personal. I had an attorney that they were across the halls from each other, and I was buying this home, and the bank was being, mean to me. And they're like, well, we need another $40,000. And I'm like, why do you need another 40? Well, we're not sure about your income. And I'm like, you're not sure about my income, but I'm going to write you a check for $40,000 extra down. And my accountant said, fire that bank and go get a new one. I'm like, I want to close this house now. So I wrote him the check, and he, my advisors, and I'm sure if you would have been my agent, would have told me the same thing. Tell that bank to go fly a kite. Why do you need to put more money into this deal?
Yeah. And, especially at the 11th hour.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And because I even told the bank, I was really angry at the closing. I'm like, who do you know that can go just write? This is back in the 90s. Who do you know that can just go write a $40,000 check? I don't think very many people, after already putting the money down that I had already put down. And so, definitely emotional. Yeah. And so I put too much money down on those properties I was going to live in. I sold them and probably made too many concessions on the sale. On the ones that were investments, those all went really smooth, non-emotional. Yeah. And I always did quite well on those. Yeah. And I think kind of confirms what you're talking about as far as letting emotions rule you.
Exactly. Yeah. And emotions are good. It's not that, because I want to validate emotions, of course, but I've learned that emotions are there to show us where we are going off course, that they're a mirror. They're really a mirror, and they don't justify anything, right? Like, the fact that you're feeling angry or you may be projecting something onto someone else, or they do not justify truth. They don't change factual information. And
I didn't need to pay more money down.
Yeah.
But because I was emotional, I went ahead and did. Yeah. And that bank was just, I don't know why they were being that way, but it didn't need to happen.
Yeah. And then
one of the things I was going to, and here's my solution to that. And I'm curious on your response on, because it's remember how you said you had to have a plan?
Yeah.
Okay. So my plan is I want to buy my next home, and I want to be out of this home before it even sells. I want to do like my neighbor I just told you about. He's already bought his other home, and now he's going to sell that home after he gets moved in, moved out. House is going to be empty. And now maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I guess emotions could still play a part on it, possibly, but I'm trying to remove as many emotions as possible so that I'm not even living in it. It's already empty. There's nothing for me to do other than show up to closing and do the transaction. Yeah. So other than maybe carry on some maintenance factors and pay the utilities, but outside of that, right, the house is already emptied out. There's nothing to do. My plan is to have it basically move-in ready. So there's not going to be, I'm probably going to go ahead and have it pre-inspected to make sure there's no surprises. And
that's smart.
So that's kind of my plan. Well, actually, I'm already working on that. I mean, I got a mess on my electrical. My meter box is corroded to the point that it won't pass an inspection. Yeah.
Okay. It's good that
it's going to have to be replaced. And it's going to be about $3,000, which really stinks. Mm-hmm. So, but it is what it is. And it's going to be, and trust me, that's going to come up in the closing, right? Because they're going to inspect the house. They're going to say, well, look, this meter box is a mess. And we're new buyers. Like, what buyer would want to go buy a house where there's a problem with it at that level where you have to get FPL involved and do a disconnect? And
your question about this is a plan that you have. So there's two things that we're looking at here. Will going this way lower my emotional attachment to the home? Yes. Now, the plan when it comes to doing that, and we recommend this a lot to sellers in your particular situation, which is if you have the ability to do that. And there's certain factors about your specific situation that are going to make this favorable for you and for the sale. And let me tell you what those are. One of the reasons why I will come to a seller and I will say, let's move you first and sell the house after. We can do that. Number one thing that we want to look at is the equity in the home. So if you're not paying cash for the other property, we can tap into, without closing on that transaction, we can financially tap into the equity of your current home to buy your other home and make that transition smooth. And so what that does is that it just helps you to kind of exhale, because imagine the stress of having everything in a moving truck and it has to be coordinated. So the synchronicity has to
100%. 100%. I had a neighbor that just sold and moved, and she's like, oh yeah, so we're going to have to sell the house and we're going to have to move. Now we got to go find another house. Wouldn't their life been so much easier? In my opinion, I would have just moved all my crap into a storage unit. I know it would have cost some money, rented a place for a year, or did an Airbnb. If you didn't want to stay a year, do an Airbnb, do a long-term Airbnb for a month, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And then spend that time shopping for your next house instead of having to do this whole thing where you're, you got to sell your house now, and then you got to go as soon as it sells. Yes. You got to load up the moving truck. Now you got to find another house really quick, and that's got to be stressful.
I call that the heart attack closing.
Oh yeah, and actually, we're always. I'm always on track. Here we go. Yeah. This is the question. It said, "How do you help someone move out of one chapter and into the next without it becoming overwhelming?"
And I love using the analogy of I guess it's a joke. It's about the mutton. And this young girl is in the kitchen with grandma and mom, and they're fixing the mutton. And the young girl asks the grandma, why do we always cut the mutton edges? And she says, well, honey, I don't know why your mom does it, but I used to do it because my pan wasn't big enough. So the mom was cutting the ends because her mother cut the ends, but she had a pan that was big enough, right? So we don't want to, and so most of the time in Florida, what people do when they're doing that double transaction is, imagine, to me, that seems so insane that you pack all your things in a moving truck. You've emptied out your house because you have to deliver it empty, but you don't know if you're going to close. The buyer's money still is not in your bank account, and you've already basically, you're already gone. And so I call that the heart attack closing. And so what I normally do with all of our sellers is I negotiate with the buyer that the seller is going to have a post-occupancy, and it is completely free. Most buyers are buying with a loan, and the lender will allow them to take possession of the property within those first 30 days. So it doesn't have to be that day. And sometimes most sellers, all they need is about a week's time. So why not do that? And I tell the buyers, when we're submitting offers, we also use that as a leverage point and say, Mr. Seller, we will allow you to stay in the home and have a post-occupancy for 5 days at no charge whatsoever so that you can vacate the home. Now, obviously, we want protection, and we put things in place, money and escrow, to protect all parties. And if I see that the people are extremely unreliable, but imagine that if that's possible, those are the things that I love to do because nobody does them. We do things extremely differently. We think completely outside of the box. And when somebody says, well, nobody does that, I hear that all the time. Well, nobody does that. I'm like, good. I like hearing that. And it's because we don't have to do things. We don't have to have that heart attack closing. Now, back to your specific situation, here's what I'm going to say. If you have equity, and because you normally don't recommend, if it's going to cost you a lot of money, I don't want that to really burden you financially. So we're going to look and we're going to minimize your costs. That's going to be a very, very present and top of mind for us. Is that this is not going to cost you a lot. But if we can work things out so that you're going to gain from it, there's going to be value. You're actually going to save. You're not going to be stressed. You're not going to have that emotional roller coaster. then yes, this is going to be a very, very good decision for you and a good option for you to do that. Also, when I can show a property with no, it's a lot more difficult, especially when you have a beautiful dog like Maya, because no matter how you clean your homes with dogs, you have the toys, you have this, you have that. And then you guys work. And let's say that it was a Saturday and your son, it was 2:00 and he was just getting his Z's, for the last 2 hours and he needed to sleep that day. So can you imagine how many lost showings we would have because the house isn't ready? We're not able, my son has to sleep in because he worked all night long. All of those things do affect. We're so conscious of that. We want to show the home 100% of the time when somebody requests it, when they want to. We do not want to lose opportunities because the property could not be shown. So when the house is vacant, we can stage it. We do a deep cleaning. A smelly house will cost you a minimum of $20,000, and I tell people, oh yeah.
That's a statistic.
Yeah. I mean, think about your wife and the powerful nose that she has. I'm sure that she can smell things that most humans cannot. And that is a gift that most women have is, we're just so sensitive to all these different smells, especially if they're new smells. So when you walk into a home and you're kind of put off by the smell, that's going to cost you.
That's another thing I'm wanting to do because I was telling her I'm wanting the house needs a repainting. So I plan on repainting the house and she was a little concerned about the colors, thinking, for resale. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
We're going to pick all the colors that we want because my plan is to have the sucker empty. And then I'm going to probably have somebody come in. It'll be the term I kind of like to use. They're going to splash and dash. Yeah. They're going to spray this whole thing down, one color, entire house, all consistent. So right now I don't need to worry about what the colors are. I can pick the colors I want. And instead of worrying about this for resale, when this house is empty, how much money do you save painting a house with the house being empty? Probably a substantial.
Oh, yes. And you know what? And it's such a good thing to do because once you do the deep cleaning, we usually, do all the work that needs to be done, the checklist of little things that are broken here, loose, this and that, replacing light bulbs and things like that. It is it's so much better. And we help you, by the way. We always go and do this
making sure your toilets flush.
Exactly. Like the colors.
Keep running for 30 minutes after they.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about you, but when I go look at a home, like the first thing I'll go do is I go and I flush the toilet. And then before I leave, I go right back and I make sure everything's working.
Yeah. We sometimes we'll turn on the shower, the faucet and flush the toilet.
See
and
if they're leaking.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
We call that inspection mindset tours. Right? Because a lot of times buyers, they're so bright-eyed, and that they go in and they look at the decor and they see how cozy and how cute it looks.
Yeah, I don't want you showing my house. I want them walking in and looking out at the view.
Yes.
I need them to come through the front door, go to the patio and look at my view.
Yes, exactly.
Go, oh, I just hope that some motorcycle doesn't scream by. That's super loud.
And the tub won't be there. Like your wife said, the tub won't be there.
No, that tub won't be there. No.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, but I'm going to tell you that you have good ideas, and we would, with all of ourselves, we will walk them through step by step. And when you have time, that mindset, oh my gosh, because I have people that they're like, oh, I didn't want to bother you, and then now it's like we want to sell a house like this spring. And they said, oh, I wish I would have known that because I would have done things differently. And so for us, preparation. It's like if you have the time, that is like you might as well have gold, stored away. If you have time, this is gold. So take that time. And if you're even remotely considering buying or selling a home, I beg people, get prepared, get your consultation, especially when it costs nothing. These are free consultations that are going to save you tens of thousands of dollars. They're going to save you time and they're going to save you the heartaches of not knowing.
Well, and then there's the other factor is back to what you're talking about is making it to the end, to the close. So some of these things I'm guessing you're going to cover also could impact not closing.
Yes.
And so having all your ducks in a row, it's just going to make everything smoother. So if Liz's perspective resonates with you and you want to learn more about her work, you can find her at dawesteam.com. Is this still valid? I'll show it here.
Yeah. Let me see here. Let me see.
754-269-7207.
Yeah, that's fine. But I'd rather use the 954-807-1489. Okay. 954-807-1489. And you can text us there anytime. And Kirk, we are ready to help you with your move, because it sounds like you're already, I love the way you're thinking. And I think that,
we're at least 2 years out.
Then you remember what I said about time? That means you literally have, golden nuggets, with time. And yes, the market's it's gonna change. But as you think about all these things and you come up with your plan, you're going to be just, so relaxed, knowing exactly what is coming up ahead.
Yeah,
so
thank you again. We probably need to have you come, and I'm guessing, I could be wrong. We can probably do it virtually, like with a FaceTime or something.
Yeah.
But, walk around. I mean, you actually got to see the guest bathroom. Is that good enough, or do we need to redo it? I mean, these are the kinds of questions.
Yes. Hey, great question. I think that we can even make that a whole series of, how the whole thing went from beginning to end.
I mean, it's a new vanity. The vanity that was in there.
Beautiful.
Actually I got that off of Facebook Marketplace. It was a complete disaster. And we just completely rehabbed it. And I had to make pieces and repair it. Actually, I took a picture of the final and showed it to the guy I bought it off of. I think we paid $40 for it. And yeah, right. I mean, it's like beautiful. Probably would cost $1,000.
Real wood. I love the soft stone. It was beautiful. Well done.
When we did that, we did raise the wall. So the original vanity, it came with the house, set up against the drywall. So when we put that one in, we made sure that if we felt necessary that needed new vanity, it's now ready to go. That one just pulls out, put a new one in, done. And so we raised that wall. We only did the one side when we first redid the bathroom, but then that side, for whatever reason, I guess we were cutting corners. I don't know. We still had the tile laying. The tile was literally laying outside, and we're like, what do we do with this? We need to get rid of it. And so I think it turned out well, but I mean, I still would like to get rid of that shower door. I like to just do I don't know what you call it, where it's just glass with a hinge where it attaches to the wall.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. It's a more modern, it's almost like a barn door kind of. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm wanting kind of, it's probably older than the barn doors. The barn
I guess it's been just a glass enclosure. This would just be
just glass. Yeah, just glass
just
with
glass
a hinge.
Enclosure. Absolutely.
And the hinge would be on the wall. No sliding. The door would just open in, I guess, in. Yeah, it opens.
It opens. It usually opens in and out. It should, if that would be the best way, that it opens both in and out. Yeah, that's what we have. And that's a very, very smart setup. The glass enclosure with that door like that would look fabulous in that bathroom and would be an upgrade.
It would be worth that upgrade to do that. I mean, my idea when it comes to this house is I want people, the person that buys it, I would hope the person that buys it would be someone to be like, okay, I can just move in here.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do.
Well, but hold that thought, because again, remember, we don't want to put the cart before the horse. And every strategy is going to be based on many, many different things that you and I have never spoken about. And so although your idea is very noble and very kind, it may not be the right strategy. So hold that thought. And,
we just want to maximize our investment at the end of the day. And I want to be in a position. So I'm going to be I'm going to be that guy that says, you know what? I want the most money I can get. And if I have to wait a little longer, I'm okay with that. If we have to experiment, I'm okay with that. We got to put it on the market, pull it back off. I'm okay with that.
Yes.
Because we're going to be in a situation where it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Then guess what?
Other than return on investment. And there's an opportunity cost to all of that too, that you have to take a look at, right? That's why
so that's what we're going to look at. That's what we're going to look at.
Estate deals kind of go pretty quick because those folks are probably looking at the opportunity cost to keep this house up, pay taxes, insurance, maintenance, HOA fees, etc. So all that plays a part into it. Now I don't want to dive into it here, but we have a strategy to offset that so that we're not going to be in that position.
Yes.
So
anyway, since you mentioned max net, right? Maximize our net profit, then definitely do not be going gung-ho on making remodels and repairs and all kinds of stuff. That's where a plan that is very like nickel and diming is important. And we'll talk about it, some other time.
We've already done a lot of things. That's the whole thing. Part of it's just and this is the other side of that investment side of it, is if it provides us with a better quality of life, then we're going to go ahead and spend the money. A good example, we spent, I think, $5,000 or $6,000 on a saltwater pool system.
Yeah.
Completely ripped it out, converted from chlorine to salt. Oh my God. My life is so much better now.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
It was so much worth it. It has zero to do with if I'm going to get any money back, to the fact that I'm not having to run to the pool store every week to test my chlorine to see where we're at.
Yeah.
They say you're supposed to do it. We literally go like once every 3 months. Don't tell my pool guy. I'm doing that. Like once every 3 months. And the thing is, it keeps it's so steady. It's not yo-yoed. I mean, the chlorine systems can yo-yo so easily. You have to maintain it very closely. Salt systems are so forgiving, and it's going to be a gradual rise up or a gradual rise down. It's not this yo-yo effect, which is really horrible on your finishes too, I found out. So it really impacts the finish that you have on your pool too, when you're doing that and adding extra acid, extra chemicals, and all this other kind of stuff where it's going crazy. So for us, that really wasn't a resale decision. That was an
emotional decision.
Easy. No, let's make our life a lot less stressful.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna remind everybody, because I'm really bad about this, and so I got my notes to remind me. If this conversation was valuable to you, a like, comment, and share helps us reach the right people. And yes, I read the comments. So we are preparing to launch Maya Soap, and are offering a limited number of complimentary bars to the viewers who engage directly with this show. And if you want to participate in that, you just send a postcard. We'll put the details in the description. And when we receive your postcard, we want your name, mailing address, email, phone number, and which episode that you watched. And complimentary bars are offered in limited quantities and subject to availability. I always got to put a disclaimer.
Awesome. Yeah. And hey, I'll do a plug for you on that, because this has actually been my second batch of Maya soaps. And the fact
really? I didn't realize that you've had them before. Okay, great.
Well, that's because the first time that Elena came over, she brought me also a batch, and it was so lovely. It was so wonderful because, these are naturally made, they're homemade, they're missing all of the yucky stuff that, makes us sick. So I really, really enjoyed it, and I can't wait. That's why I was asking you guys, I can't wait to see, the lines that you come up with, because I am a huge fan of these handmade soaps. I think that they're wonderful, and I can't wait to get my hands on some more.
On more. Yeah, we'll have a website where you can actually order it, and we're working on that. So if you go to mayasoap.com, it's actually not quite working, guys. So the best way is going to be looking at the description and dropping us a card in the mail, and we'll send a bar out to you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, Liz. I appreciate you meeting with me, because we had that audio issue. I hopefully everybody, and then don't forget to request a book. So
thank you so much.